So a little bit about Jeff. Jeff Braylio's
He was here last week.
He was. Well,
Yeah.
he was so good, we thought we'd bring him back.
Yeah.
He
He's
was
a real
as
estate
personal
attorney.
as me. So Jeff was my college professor 20 years ago at the Utah Valley University. And he taught macroeconomics, business law, English 1010 and 2010. And if you guys ever go to workshops that I teach, I'm actually teaching one on August 15th about how to flip properties from A to Z COVID style. It'll be an all-day workshop. But if you ever wonder why my grammar is the way, I'll just give all the credit to Jeff Braylio, because he was my college professor for both English 1010 and 2010. With that, as
I'll take credit for anything.
Jeff Braylio!
Jeff, listen to that guy. Listen to that guy.
You are live on air, my friend.
I am live on AR.
Yes.
Good to be with you guys this morning.
Yes. Yes. Good to have you this
Say
morning.
yes. Say yes. Yoshi,
Say yes.
yeah, are you gonna do UPW virtual in November? You don't even have to go anywhere, and you can hang out with your dog, so there's no excuse.
That's
you can
true.
play with your kids too.
Yeah, that's true.
Are you done?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's done. Good. So you got that commitment, Jeff? We just got him to say yes.
Say yes.
So here's the question why we wanted to have you on the call for today is we were talking about things that have changed due to COVID, but just more like a little larger versus simpler. And I thought this would be interesting with you as a lawyer that has a lot of experience. What are you seeing people's attitudes differently now, probably 4 months later, than before, as you're talking to clients? Because I think you're going to get a good temperature. Most people are not calling lawyers for fun to celebrate. Hey, I did this big thing. Most of the time they're calling lawyers like, hey, I'm getting sued, or I got this challenge on a joint venture agreement, or now I'm making some money. I need to set up an LLC with an S election or a series LLC or a trust, and I'm just giving you all these sound bites for marketing, right? So what do you think is you got a good temperature those? How are you seeing people's attitudes differently now than probably 4 months ago?
They're certainly much more motivated. They are more optimistic. And I think they're moving forward aggressively, which I think is great. I mean, because there was sort of this time period where we were all shut in and no one did anything, and everyone was worried about what was going to happen. And as we came out of it, I think everyone was just so excited to get back to work and getting stuff done and doing deals and picking up projects. So it's been kind of off the chart, and a lot of forward progress. I worry that they're not necessarily really looking at the long term.
Yeah.
Because we saw this in 2007 and 8. That like all the signs were there that something awful was coming, but the current market that you're living in and experiencing in this day and moment, you don't feel it or see it. And so you assume that it's not going to happen because today it's not happening. People aren't seeing the mass layoffs or the effects of people being laid off. Tenants still aren't being evicted. People's mortgages are still in forbearance. The PPP money and other government aid is all temporary. Much of it's ending in this week, and then still undetermined what additional injections of cash there'll be.
Yep.
So, yeah, the current moment, I think there's a lot of motivation and a lot of excitement to do things. But yeah, I think I don't know if they're necessarily seeing the bigger picture.
Cool. Can I add a couple things with that, Yoshi? Is that okay?
Please.
So 4 months ago was literally March 21st was probably the first week after we went from what's coronavirus, and no one calls it that now, it's all COVID-19, right?
Yeah.
So if you think about it, so what's the coronavirus? Why did the Jazz player get sick? We were at a real estate investor meeting that Wednesday night, and we're like, oh man, not Dante, what's the guy's name?
Rudy.
Rudy Gobert. We're like, oh, Rudy Gobert has coronavirus, right?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
And then the next day they shut down the NBA.
Yeah.
And then I actually think Jeff and a couple other investors and I went to lunch that Saturday, and before they stopped and saying, hey, look, we're shutting down the United States, right?
Yeah.
So what I think is important right now, Jeff brought a good point, and I wrote this down. If we didn't have the PPP money, I think we'd be in a way worse spot. Way
worse.
way worse. Okay. So now here's the question: who's going to pay for the PPP? We are, as the taxpayers. Someone's got to pay it, right?
Yeah.
The second thing is who's going to pay for the $600 a month unemployment stipend, depending on what your jobs were. We are, right? And I think that I made moves in March that are barely coming to fruition now, because you can't just hurry and liquidate your property in a week normally,
Right.
unless you're selling at a huge
Exactly.
discount.
Yeah.
And even if you're selling at a huge discount, 4 to 2 months ago, you'd want a larger discount because you didn't know how it was going to turn out.
Yeah.
Because you're smart to do that, right?
Right.
So I think, Jeff, you brought up a good point. I'm still, one of the questions we wrote out is what are we going to do in the next 12 to 24 months? I'm now getting my 6 months of, I already have my 6 months of personal, but 6 months of business operating expenses for all businesses. It's taken that long to liquidate or reposition equity. I'm refinancing a bunch of properties to free up cash flow, decrease expenses, and manage my money better. And I think that the investors who did not invest before the last downturn have no idea what could happen. And those who invested pre the other downturn are like getting reminded saying, oh man, you're right, we got to make these decisions and we might need to modify what we're doing because we know better only if you did one cycle. There's a guy, Peter Fortunato, he talks about a starter, builder, and ender. A starter is you've been investing less than 10 years, which most people who are listening to this call or we talk to are less than 10 years.
Yep.
A builder is years 11 through 30, right? So
Right.
that means you've gone through 2 or 3 market cycles as a real estate investor.
Yeah.
And then an ender is years 31 through 40. You have 2 concerns: preserving capital, you don't want to lose principal, and you want to be tax efficient, pay the least amount of tax possible. So knowing that we're in our 40s and we're all in our 40s, Jeff, you're 49, we're all in our builder phase, right? We're all in our builder phase that we're kind of hitting peaks, but we've gone through a couple cycles. So I think that people should just be really conscientious of that. And then the last thing is, regardless of what your political interest is, this next 9,500 days is going to be really entertaining, and depends on who wins the election is going to have some big influence of what happens moving forward. So I think it's important for you to keep your cash reserves. I think it's important for you to exercise discipline if you've never done that before. You should also get more familiar with technology so you can work. Those who weren't able to adapt and work remotely and still take on projects, literally their income went in half or they didn't make any money. What are your thoughts, Yoshi?
I absolutely agree. Yeah. You know, one of the things that I love that you share at UVREA, actually you've shared it on the show, is you've got to have at least 6 months of reserves in your bank account for that crisis.
Right.
6 months of reserves of living expenses, to be clear, for that crisis. So if you lost your job and PPP runs out and unemployment runs out, you can still survive for 6 months, you know, which is usually a good enough time to go find new employment. And so I think that's so smart, because I was chatting with a buddy of mine a couple days ago actually, and he was saying, you know, one thing that I recall from the last recession, he's huge on, you got an email from him, by the way, so you'll know who I'm talking about, but he sent an email to the two of us. He bought $5,000 worth of food storage because he feels like this could be really tragic.
Yeah.
There's a book out there that he shared. You're 9 meals away from committing crime. Like, I can't remember the exact title, but if you couldn't feed your family 9 meals, which is 3 days of zero food, at that point, people tend to now consider committing crime because they want to keep their kids fed, right? So I can't remember the name of the book exactly, but it's like 9 meals away from, I don't know, being a criminal or something. I can't remember. He was telling me about it. And with all the shortage of food that's happening right now, he's bought $5,000 of storage food like wheat and rice and all these types of things. And he said, you know, we'd be willing to share it, but we're definitely gonna, you know, protect it we get to that rainy day where people are now stealing from one another. He goes, we bought a lot so we could share, but if anyone tries to come and steal it, we are fully ammunitioned in the house and will use all force necessary to protect it. But anyways, it's really smart. And where I'm going with that is he said a lesson that he learned on the last downturn is he said, if I could go back, one thing that I want more of is cash. He says, I would want more cash. So he too has been preparing, liquidating, getting ready to have more cash in hand for this rainy day that, could potentially come.
Yeah, and this investor, it's I'm reading the email now. There are only 9 meals between mankind and anarchy.
There you go.
From Alfred Henry Lewis in 1906.
Yes.
So this investor, mentor of ours, because he's
Yeah.
definitely more experienced than we are, is 10 years older than me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Probably 5 or 6 or 7 years older than you.
I think he's 10 years older than me.
10 years older than you? All right,
Yeah.
then he's 15 years older than me.
Right.
You're 46?
7.
47?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
As of today.
Happy birthday today.
Thank you.
Yep. So, I think that's really important is, when I got that email, I'm like, what the hell is this email about?
Yeah.
And then I read it, I'm like, this is really good, because...
I was with him when he sent it
Oh,
to
you were? Okay,
Yeah, he goes,
cool.
I'm sending you an email. And then he goes, I'm going to CC Matt too. I like him.
Yeah, I'm glad he likes me. I got
Yeah.
an email. But what's cool is being thoughtful, right?
Yeah.
So with this comment with Jeff is Dave Ramsey, who I like. I actually think there's a book called The Total Money Makeover. I think everyone should listen to that book.
Mm-hmm.
The Total Money Makeover. It helps you establish some saving habits. Knowing Jeff has an economic undergraduate degree with a law degree, he's an impeccable saver. That guy could live off like $2,500 a month if he just moved into my basement, right? So if things hit the fan, he gets the connection with my kids, the social with my wife, and the engaging, thought-provoking questions from me. With that, learning how to save and living with below your means is an important lifestyle thing. Because if you can always adjust your lifestyle, you'll not have that concern. And then, we need shelter, food, shelter, transportation, and stuff to cover utilities, right?
Yeah.
So all of us have those, unless you live in the Ozarks, right?
Yeah.
But if you have those 4 basic things, then you have extra stuff, right?
Right.
Connection, conversation, you can play games outside without buying stuff, we're just getting so gratifying with life. So I think it's a good time to reflect, especially, it's kind of like a mid-year review. July is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a good time to review, hey, where are we at? So that we can, keep progressing and getting the life that we're looking for.
Exactly. Yep. And, on with others, I don't know if it's in that email, but already food prices have started to go up,
Right.
because there's a food shortage. And
Yeah.
I can't remember what the numbers he was sharing with me, but food is about to become potentially very unaffordable, right? And that's, again, once that starts to happen, that's 9 meals away from anarchy. So anyways, very interesting theory. I didn't read the book yet, but he was telling me all about it.